everybody, it's Miss Karen, the Young Adult Librarian at the Goshen Public Library. And I'm back again with another edition of Fairytale Fridays, Fractured Favorites. This week we'll be reading The 12 Dancing Princesses by the Brothers Grimm, and I'll also show you a couple of new modern YA reinterpretations of The 12 Dancing Princesses when we're done reading the original. The original 12 Dancing Princesses was included in the collections published by the Brothers Grimm first in 1815, and you can find it listed as the 12 Dancing Princesses. Sometimes it's the Worn Out Dancing Shoes, and there's a few other titles. And the story has also been retold in other traditions in other ways, and the Grimm brothers also have a couple of different versions of it. We are reading the Worn Out Dancing Shoes version of it, published in 1815 for the first time. Ready? Once upon a time, there lived a king who had 12 daughters, and one was more beautiful than the next. They all slept in one large room, and their beds stood side by side. When they would retire for the night, the king would shut the door to their bedroom and lock it tight. But when he returned to open the door in the morning, he found that the shoes of the princesses were worn out from dancing, and no one could figure out how this could keep happening. Finally, the king proclaimed that whoever found out where his daughters were dancing at night could choose one of them for his wife and would become king after his death. But if anyone came forward and failed to uncover anything within 3 days and nights, then he would lose his life. It wasn't long before a prince came along who decided to try his luck. He was received with a warm welcome, and in the evening he was conducted to a room adjacent to the bedroom of the princesses. A bed was prepared for him, and he was told to keep watch and find out where the girls went dancing. Just to make sure that the princesses didn't do anything in secret or go somewhere else, the door of the room that led to his was kept open. But the eyelids of the prince became heavy as lead, and before he knew it, he was fast asleep. When he awoke in the morning, all 12 princesses had spent the night dancing, for their shoes were right there with holes in the soles. On the second and third nights, the same thing happened, and then the king had no mercy and ordered the prince's head chopped off. Many men followed him and wanted to try their luck too, but one after another they lost their lives. Now it happened that an old soldier who was wounded and could no longer serve in the army was headed to the city where the king dwelt. Along the way, he met an old woman who asked him where he was going. "To tell you the truth, I don't really know," he said, and then he added in jest, "I wouldn't mind finding out how the king's daughters wear out their shoes. Then I could become king." "It's really not that hard," the old woman said. "Just don't have any of the wine that they bring you in the evening. Pretend that you're already asleep." Then she gave him a little cloak and said, "If you put this on, you'll be invisible, and you'll have no trouble following the princesses." After receiving the good advice, the soldier began to think seriously about the venture, and he screwed up his courage to present himself to the king as a suitor. He was welcomed just as warmly as the others had been, and was given royal garments to wear. In the evening, when it was time to go to sleep, he was conducted to the antechamber, and just as he was getting ready to go to bed, the oldest of the princesses came and brought him a beaker of wine. But the soldier tied a sponge under his chin, and he let the wine run down into it and didn't drink a single drop. Then he lay down, and after a while he began to snore as if he were sound asleep. The 12 princesses heard him, and they burst out laughing. The oldest said, "There's another one who could have done better things with his life." Then they all got up, opened chests, cabinets, closets, and took out all kinds of splendid clothes. They groomed themselves in front of the mirrors, rushed to and fro, and could hardly wait for the ball. But the youngest said, "You're all so excited. I don't know about you, but I have a strange feeling, and I am worried that something bad is going to happen to us." "You silly goose," the oldest said. "You're always nervous." Have you already forgotten how many princes have been here before? I didn't really need to give that soldier a sleeping potion. Even if I hadn't given it to him, that oaf would never have woken up." When they were all ready, they took a good look at the soldier before leaving, but his eyes were shut tight, and since he was neither moving nor stirring, they were sure that the coast was clear. Then the oldest went over to her bed and tapped on it. It sank right down into the ground, and they all climbed down the opening one after another, with the oldest going first. The soldier, who was watching everything, lost no time in putting on the cloak and followed in the steps of the youngest. Halfway down the stairs, he stepped on her dress, and she was so startled she cried out, "What's going on? Who's holding my dress?" "Don't act like a fool," the oldest princess said. "You just caught it on a nail." They all went down the stairs, and when they reached the bottom, they were standing in a marvelous avenue of trees, where the leaves were all made of silver, and glittered and sparkled. The soldier thought, "You'd better take a piece of evidence with you." When he broke off a branch, the tree made a tremendous cracking sound. "Something's wrong! Did you hear that noise?" the youngest girl shouted. "Those are just the gun salutes, for soon we'll be setting our princes free," the oldest insisted. They soon reached another avenue of trees, where all the leaves were made of gold, and then a third where they were made of pure diamonds. The soldier broke a branch off of each one, and the cracking sound was so loud that each time the youngest princess was startled and felt afraid. But the oldest kept insisting that the sounds were nothing but gun salutes. The princesses walked on and reached a huge lake with 12 boats on it. In each of the boats there was a handsome prince. All of them had been waiting for the 12 princesses, and each one took a princess in his boat. The soldier went aboard with the youngest princess. "I'm not sure what's going on, but the ship is much heavier than usual, and I will have to row with all my might to get it moving." "It must be the hot weather," the youngest princess said. "I'm feeling a little warm too." On the other side of the lake there was a beautiful, brightly lit castle, with drums and trumpets making merry music within. They rowed over to the palace, entered, and each of the princes danced with his sweetheart. The soldier was invisible, but he danced along as well, and whenever a princess picked up a glass of wine, he would drink it and drain it dry before it reached her lips. The youngest princess started worrying about this too, but the oldest told her to keep quiet. They all danced until 3 a.m, when all of the shoes were worn through and they had to stop. The princes rowed them back across the lake, and this time the soldier sat in the first boat with the oldest princess. The princesses took leave of their partners on the banks of the lake, and they promised to return on the following night. When they reached the stairs, the soldier ran ahead of them and got into bed. And when the 12 girls came dragging wearily in, he was snoring so loudly again that they all heard it and said, "We don't have to worry about him." Then they took off their beautiful dresses, put them away, placed the worn-out shoes under the bed, and went to sleep. The next morning, the soldier decided not to say anything, but wanted to witness the strange events again, and he went with them for a second and then a third night. Everything happened as on the first night, and each time they danced until the shoes fell apart. The third time, he took a glass as a piece of evidence. The hour came when he was to bear witness, and he took with him the 3 branches and the cup, and went to the king. The 12 princesses were waiting behind the door and listening to what he would say. When the king asked, "Where did my 12 daughters wear out their shoes?" The soldier replied, "In an underground palace with 12 princes," and he reported what had happened and produced the evidence. The king called for his daughters and asked them if the soldier was telling the truth. They realized that they had been exposed and that trying to deny it would do no good. They had to admit to everything. The king asked the soldier which of his daughters he wanted as a wife. He replied, "I'm not so young anymore. How about the oldest?" The wedding was celebrated on that very day, and the king promised that the soldier would inherit the kingdom after his death. As for the princes, they were compelled to remain under a spell for exactly the number of nights that they had danced with the princesses. The end. And I read this story from this annotated Brothers Grimm. So there are a few adaptations of the 12 Dancing Princesses in more modern YA books. The first one that I'm going to show you is this one. It's called Entwined by Heather Dixon, and we have it here at the library, so if you're interested in borrowing it, you're more than welcome to. You can put a hold on it in the catalog, or you can give me a call at the library and I will put it aside for you. This story says, "For centuries the keeper has been waiting within the walls of the palace, but now Azalea, eldest of the kingdom's 12 princesses, has found the magic entrance to his hideout. Azalea, who thought her life was unfurling brightly before her, but then lost her mother and her freedom. She too is trapped inside the walls of the palace by the strict rules of mourning. No color, no sunlight, no suitors, no dancing. What is more, her father won't stop treating her like a child. So the keeper extends an invitation. Each night, Azalea and her sisters may dance in his silver forest. He is dashing, and his magnetic eyes are always on Azalea. What the keeper wants in exchange may cost her everything. But the keeper should not underestimate Azalea's temper, or her strength, or her love for her sisters and her kingdom." So similar to the 12 Dancing Princesses, there are 12 princesses in the story. They are invited to dance in a silver forest, but it sounds like these princesses aren't there necessarily by their own choice, and it sounds like it might be a little more dangerous than the situation that we saw in the original story. So Azalea will have to save herself and possibly her sisters from the mysterious keeper. So if you want to check this one out, you can call or you can put it on hold. It's Entwined by Heather Dixon. The other one that I'm going to show you, we do own here at the library as a physical copy, so you can put it on hold. It is checked out right now, so I'm not sure when it will be back on the shelf, but you can place a hold on the computer or give me a call and I'll do it for you. It is also available on Overdrive. So if you log on to your Overdrive account, you can borrow an e-copy of it. It's called The House of Salt and Sorrows. It's by Erin A. And it is a fairly new, I'm trying to make sure you can see the cover. It is a fairly new YA book. Let me make it a little bigger and then you can maybe see it a little better. There, House of Salt and Sorrows. So let me read you a little bit about what that is about. It says, Anna Lee lives a sheltered life at Highmore with her sisters and their father and stepmother. Once there were 12, but loneliness fills the grand halls now that 4 of the girls' lives have been cut short. Each death was more tragic than the last. The plague, a plummeting fall, a drowning, a slippery plunge, and there are whispers throughout the surrounding villages that the family is cursed by the gods. Disturbed by a series of ghostly visions, Anna Lee becomes increasingly suspicious that her sister's death were no accident. The girls have been sneaking out every night to attend glittering balls, dancing until dawn in silk gowns and shimmering slippers, and Anna Lee isn't sure whether to try and stop them or join their forbidden trysts. Because who or what are they really dancing with? When Anna Lee's involvement with a mysterious stranger who has secrets of his own intensifies, it's a race to unravel the darkness that has fallen over her family before it claims her next. House of Salt and Sorrows is a spellbinding novel filled with magic and a rustle of gossamer skirts down long, dark hallways. Get ready to be swept away. And one of the reviews says it is an eerie, lovely 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, full of ghosts and gods and a fascinating waterfront world. So if that sounds interesting to you, it's available on Overdrive, and we do, like I said, have a physical copy here at the library that you can place on hold, and as soon as it comes back, you'll be able to check it out. So that's what it looks like. It sounds like this one, the princess has to save everyone, and not necessarily the prince. And it doesn't quite sound like they at least not all of them get a happily ever after in that one. So I hope that you liked the original version of the 12 Dancing Princesses, and maybe you found something new to check out and read. I will be back next week with another original fairy tale and some more current YA retellings.